Next up, give it up for Drew Banks and Vuksan for the next session.
Okay, so our next presenter is a truly versatile individual. He's an engineer turned business guy turned executive. And on top of that, he's also a novelist. Most importantly, he managed to stay entrepreneur at heart even when he became head of international for Prezi. And he's here today to talk about Prezi's road to success. So please put your hands together for Drew Banks from Prezi.
Can you hear me? Okay. Before I start, I want to make a couple of comments on the last session. First of all, I was here yesterday for some of the pitches, and I thought some of them had great ideas. I mean, I'm not an investor, but at least one of them had solid market sizing, solid traction, and a solid business model. So I'm not exactly sure what they were talking about when they were saying they were all crap. There is one thing the guy said, which I agree with, and I think it's that you need to, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to talk to people. If you see, no matter how intimidating they are, which that guy was pretty intimidating, if you see them out there, you need to go, and you need money, you need to go talk to them. And I know, how many people in the audience are introverts? How many would classify themselves as an introvert? I think you're lying. You're so introverted, you're not putting up your hand. I'm an introvert as well. On the Myers-Briggs scale, I'm an introvert. And I've had to learn, and one of the things Americans learn, it's not that Americans are better pitchers, it's that Americans learned to conquer their fear of the public and their fear of talking to people in the public, and we're forced to early on in our schooling. So I think it's very important, if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're not raising money, you want to be out there. You want to talk to your customers. You want to talk to potential employees. You want to be out there. The second thing I'd like to say before getting started is I want to debunk something that Scott said. Where's my clicker? Ah, there we go. So Scott said this morning that as you get older, and I'm maybe the oldest guy in here, that you stop experimenting or you slow down experimentation. Not true in my case. I'm an engineer, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a writer. All three of those things lead me to loving experimentation. Absolutely, I love it. When I get to know something, I get bored. And I want to go on in the experimentation. When I was younger, I'd be like, okay, I know this, but I got to stick in the job. And now I'm like, as you get older, you're like, screw it. I'm done with that. I've learned that. I can move on. I love experimenting. But now let me shift to my talk. So my talk today is about crossing the chasm. Has anyone ever heard this term, crossing the chasm? Okay, a few of you. So it's based on a business book that was written before most of you were born in 1991. And basically, it's a model for startups. And it talks about your adoption by the product or service adoption by customers. So first, as you build a product and service, it's adopted by innovators. So these are really, really early adopters. They love your product, they love your idea, they use it, and you think, wow, that's great, I've got some users. The second phase is early adopters. It's what this guy, Jeffrey Moore, calls early adopter phase. This is a phase where entrepreneurs and startup CEOs get confused and they think early adoption means they have a solid market. And what often happens in this phase is they start doing everything. They're like, wow, people love us. We're going to do this, 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 and this. And then what happens is they fall into the chasm. They don't have enough funding or revenue to do all the things they plan to do, and they can't get the adoption beyond the early adopters, so they fall in the chasm. What you want to do is figure out one target market to get across the chasm to, so you can get to the early majority, and then beyond that to nirvana. So that's generally what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about it as it's applied to Prezi. So I think the Prezi story is a great story for many of you in here. Because the Prezi founder, how many people know that Prezi was founded in Hungary? Yeah, I think a Hungarian here. A lot of people in the U.S. don't know this, but Prezi was founded in Hungary and is now a global success. There's some very interesting things about that story that helped it become a global success. First of all, it was founded by these three guys. The guy on your right is the guy that originally conceived the idea. This guy is not an entrepreneur. He's not a businessman. And that's not to say that an entrepreneur or a businessman couldn't have come up with this, but he's not. He's an artist and architect, and he was getting a lot of notoriety across Europe and around the world. And he was looking for a product to help showcase his ideas, these big architectural plans, and then zoom into the details. He couldn't find one, so he's a bit of a nerd and a coder, and so he coded up this thing for only him to use. And he would be speaking at a conference like this about, some art that he had done or some architecture, and people would come up to him afterwards and say, "That was a great presentation, but what was the tool you were using?" And he's like, "It's my tool. I have to code it every time. You don't want to use it." Well, the guy on the left, when he was speaking in Hungary, came up to him, and this guy's not an entrepreneur either. He was a professor of new media. And the guy said, "Yeah, well, it's really cool what you're doing with media. Can we just productize it? Can we create an editor and give it out to our friends?" That's what they did. They created an editor, gave it out to their friends, and it went viral almost immediately. And so they recruited a third entrepreneur who is a third co-founder who is an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur out of Sweden. He's Hungarian but grew up in Sweden. And that's how they came in to become the co-founding team. Now, there are four things about Prezi's founding that I think are really interesting and allowed him to go global almost immediately. First is market. So the market that they went after, again, these weren't entrepreneurs except the third guy. They weren't thinking, what is the market? What are the competitors in that market? What are we going after? The guy created something for his own need. And they could have he was experimenting with zoomable user interfaces for a while. So he didn't have to choose presentation software. He could have chose OS design. He could have chosen a lot of things. But they chose presentation software because he was presenting at conferences. And what's really important about this market, it was a market that was waiting for disruption for 20 years. PowerPoint was introduced in 1990. And it's not often that you get to enter a market where the leading player is often prefaced by the words "death by." That's a great market to be in. That's a really great market to be in. The second point is the business model. The business model that they choose was a new model at the time, and I don't think they did an analysis of business models. I'm sure they didn't, knowing these guys. They said, "We want as many people using this product as possible, so we want to give it away for free. But we got to make money, so we're going to have a premium offering." So they did what is now known as a freemium model. They did a very special, unique implementation of the freemium model, which goes against the grain of most freemium model experts. And if you're interested, I can talk about that later in the Q&A. So that's the business model they chose. Now, the third thing they did was when this serial entrepreneur came, who's a complete idealist, he said, "Let's see what other companies are trying to do what we're trying to do. We're trying to make idea sharing easier. Let's see, there's this little bitty conference company called TED Conferences." Everybody heard of TED? So what Peter did is like Ted's doing something similar. He picked up the phone and he called Chris Anderson. This is getting over that introversion thing. And Chris Anderson's a curator of TED. And in a weak moment, Chris said, "Okay, it sounds sort of interesting. Fly out to New York, and then, I'll talk to you." And then the next day he called back and said, "I don't know what I was thinking. No, I don't have time." And Peter said, "Screw you. I booked a ticket. It's the last money we've had. I'm coming to New York, and you're going to give me 15 minutes. And at the end of that 15 minutes, TED invested in Prezi. We were the first company they had ever invested in, and that brand association with TED was incredibly powerful. The fourth thing is when TED invested, it convinced a Danish VC, Sunstone Capital, to invest. This was a very small investment, by the way, really small. And that VC said, "You guys are growing so fast, you need to open an office in the US." Now, these guys were about 10 employees at the time. They barely had an office. They had an apartment in Budapest. So like, "You're asking us to go to open an office in San Francisco," and they did it. So it was like 6 months after they started and they opened an office in San Francisco. Those are the 4 things that these guys either were really smart about or they lucked into that allowed them to be a global success and take them to the next phase. This is the innovator phase. So some important things happened in this first year of Prezi's life. So we had the first TED presenter, which was James Geary, using Prezi to speak on metaphor. Couldn't ask for a better presentation, a better topic for Prezi, because Prezi is great at using visual metaphors, as I'm using here, showing a chasm and zooming out and then zooming back into it. So that was the first thing. So that TED association allowed us to get a speaker like James Geary. We also had our first US customer, which was a futurist customer. It's funny, I've worked with this customer for 20 years. It's called Institute of the Future. This customer works with everyone in Silicon Valley. We had them as a first customer, which was great. So all of a sudden, the viral effect started increasing for Prezi in the US. Now, a few of these next things happened, a few of them, by pure, I would say, reaction. We weren't yet a company with a lot of VC money that was very planful. We took off in education, and we wanted to give education something unique. So we created a special EDU license structure. It wasn't we were thinking, let's go after the education market, at least I don't think so, I wasn't there. It was, we want this to be used in education, let's create an EDU license structure. The next thing was Institute for the Future did not like the cloud-based thing. They didn't like SaaS. They were uncomfortable. It wasn't secure enough, blah, blah. I think it could have been Procter & Gamble. It may not have been Institute for the Future. So we had an engineer say, look, I've always wanted to create like this old school application, so I'm going to create a desktop app. So he created a desktop app for this customer, but it was purely out of experimentation. It was not out of planful, this is the market, this is where we're going. And then because we were spread between San Francisco and Budapest, and we were using Prezi for our job, we created this very unique feature in Prezi. Oops, I'm sorry. I went past something, which I'll come back. I wasn't looking at my presentation. Collaboration. I want to come back to this cash flow positive thing because it's very important. So we created a cash flow. We created collaboration. So the collaboration in a presentation for 2 people across the ocean to collaborate at the same time in presentation, can't do that in a desktop application. Can only do that in a SaaS application. Very unique feature. So let me talk about the cash flow positive. So in this first year, we reached cash flow positivity. How many of you have created a company that's reached cash flow positivity? Oh, wow. Another Hungarian. Wow, I love it. Maybe it's in Hungarian's blood. When I was recruited into Prezi, and I'll talk about that in a minute, I'm a sucker for visual communications. So it was a hard sell, but for a different reason. But when I saw the cash flow positivity, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And it was because of this business model that they were able to achieve this. So that was the first year. And we reached 1 million users this first year and a half. We got to 1 million users at the end of 2010. I'm going to show you a little video that was created by that time. I'm going to show you a bit of it. Looks very different than Prezi today. So it just shows you, anyone that knows Prezi, you can go, this will show you some of the roots of Prezi. Now I want to get to the early adopter phase. So again, in that experimentation, especially from the engineering side, we had an engineer say, you know what, mobility is really hot. I've never done a mobile app. Can I do a mobile app? And our head of engineering said, okay, it's not where we're going, but do a mobile app. He failed. He came back and said, it didn't work. Can I try again? And we said, okay, go try again. He failed. And then he came back a third time. He said, can I try again? He's like, well, do it on your own time, but okay, go out. And he succeeded. And we launched our iPad app, our iPhone app first. And then, boom. I mean, within no time, we were 5 million users. I mean, mobility. Now, if you look back at what we did, we had SaaS, we have a desktop app, now we have an iPhone app. So all of a sudden, we're a cross-platform play. Another very unique feature in presentation software to do cross-platform. But we didn't do it in a very planful way. And then our Series B. Now I'm going to challenge something that both David said and the people in the last panel said. The last panel said, yeah, the best thing about getting money is get a referral. Get a referral for someone we trust. Yeah, it's important. David said, know your numbers inside and out. Really measure everything. Absolutely important. The best way to get money is by not needing their money. It's like being at a bar. You want to pick up the guy or girl, you act like you're not interested. And we weren't interested. And I'll tell a story about this. When I was recruited into Prezi, I'd been running my own company. I spent way too long, 5 years knocking on every VC in Silicon Valley's door, trying to raise money. I ended up raising $10 million. I was building a company to solve the challenge of home networking, so I was building consumer software, enterprise software, and consumer hardware. I loved it because it was a complex problem. Now I hate it because it was a complex problem. To do hardware, you have to raise a gajillion dollars. I ended up raising a lot of money, but then we needed more, lost the company. So very similar, or very typical Silicon Valley company. While I raised $10 million, it took me 4 years to get someone to return an email. I never had, even after raising that money, I never had a VC come by my office, ever. The first day I was at Prezi, someone from Excel dropped in like with a cake or something and say, hey, just dropping by to see how you guys are doing. I was at the World Economic Forum and they were talking about you. I heard you made a Prezi. And I was like, they're just dropping by? They were dropping by because they were trying to give us money. And Peter, not out of a strategy, was like, we don't need your money. We don't want your money. We're cash flow positive. We got enough money to grow. You want to talk to a VC, and as as you've probably seen, VCs have big egos, very big egos. They think they know the world about business. They think they know everything about business. Most of them have not come up with an idea. Most of them have not executed that idea. Or if they have, they've done it once and got lucky, or maybe they were smart, and made a lot of money and went on to VC world. So when you talk to them, know that, yeah, okay, they do know a lot about turning a company into a very big company and about getting a good exit. But you guys are the ones that know about ideation. You guys are the ones that probably know about the execution phase, at least at the beginning, to get the product out the door and up and running. Certainly they're going to help you scale. So really, really know that, and don't need their money. If you can help it, don't need their money, and when they come to you, say, don't really need it. And then they'll come again, believe me. Okay, so after we got this money, we had to get more planful. First thing we did is what are the markets we're going after? What are the markets that we're in? We're in education, business, and conference. I came on board around this time, or actually about a year before, and I created 3 programs in here. Now, as I was hired as head of marketing, and then I joined, I realized there was no sales, so I took on sales, and there was no support, so I took on support. So I ended up building out the marketing, sales, and support organizations. And one of the first things I did was typically after you're getting your first Series A, what you do is do everything you can track. Do only things you can track, because VCs only want to see numbers. And I'm an engineer, I love that we can track everything now. But I'm also, in addition to a novelist, I've written 2 business books. My second business book is about elevating the voice of the customer. I'm a big believer in elevating the voice of the customer. And Prezi has a lot of evangelical customers. So I created 3 programs in these markets. One we were just talking about earlier, before the presentation, is the ambassador program. And companies that create ambassador programs in the US usually focus only on the US. I took it global immediately because US students are high maintenance and very entitled, and international students have been our best, and I shouldn't say that. Our ambassadors are great, but international students have been really great. Second is keynote evangelism. We try to get influential speakers at influential conferences using Prezi to talk about really world-changing things. Great example of this is in 2012 we got Bono to use Prezi at TED to talk about ending world hunger. How much do you think that cost? Anyone guess? Huh? Yeah, we built the Prezi. We went to Bono's team and said, you want to end world hunger, we can make you a much more powerful presentation. For celebrity advertising like that, it usually costs $100,000. But if you can get to their cause and actually help them solve their cause, it was great. Third one's my favorite program. It's the Prezi Experts program. This is, I was noticing globally there were people creating businesses around Prezi, design and training businesses. So basically we found global players, these global experts, and if they were doing Prezi designer training well enough, we said, we'll call you an expert and we'll put you on our website. And I can tell you that our experts make probably more money than anyone in our company, almost every one of our experts. I then started seeing international being very, very important, so we started localizing in languages. We localized in Spanish, Korean, and Japanese first. Latin America took off, so I localized in Portuguese. Then I moved to Europe. I then moved from marketing, sales, and support because international was so interesting, and I had a personal reason for coming to Europe. I moved to Budapest, and then localized in German and French. Now there's one language on here that we haven't localized in yet. Anyone guess what is the obvious missing language for Prezi? Hungarian. Why didn't we localize in Hungarian? Huh?
Can I take a guess?
So am I late? Am I already? I'm almost done. So why we didn't localize? Because the founders didn't want to over-focus on that market. And they said, no, we're not going to localize. I had to convince them after 5 years that we're going to localize in Hungarian. And it was after we'd reached 40 million. Finally, we get to the chasm. Okay, I'm going to go through this quickly. Anyone guess which of these markets we're going to cross the chasm with? Because we're at that point right now. You may think that we're at a big company. We are at a big company. We have over 40 million users. We're growing about 2 million users a month. Still early adopters, though. So we still have to cross this chasm. Who do you think we're crossing it with? Education. Who thinks education? Who thinks conference? Who thinks business? Business is right. So we're going to cross it with business. It's not intuitive. Education's our strongest market, but conference is a niche. Education's our strongest market. But even though EdTech's really strong now, rarely, and I can't remember any innovation that happens in education that gets adopted by business. But all the time, business gets adopted by education. Then this is the end. Where we want to get to is 2 billion users. We really want to get to this place. Thank you very much. Did I run over?
Okay, thank you, Drew. Very insightful information, especially when it comes to raising funds. I wish we could have another panel and include you in another panel on that. Since we do not have much time left, let's jump immediately to the business model, which is unique to Prezi and very disruptive at the time. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the people that talk about the freemium model talk about the holy grail of freemium model is to create a product and drive your users through usage to the funnel, and as through usage, you actually get to the premium offering, which is great. That's a great seamless way to get people through the funnel. What the challenge with that for a company, a small company, is you need to get enough money to get your product good enough to get people to use it enough to get through the funnel before you get revenue. That's the challenge. So you need money. What Prezi did was a freemium model, but they based that premium offering on privacy. So students could use it for free and still can use it for free, but if you're in a business, you need privacy. So to even try out Prezi, you need to pay for at least that first level of premium offering. So we had money coming in from businesses from year one and are still cash flow positive based on our business growth.
And
does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Now a question I'm personally very interested in. So you guys localize the service in Japanese, Korean, German, but there is one market that is more or less a nightmare for the startups from the West. Actually, not startups, but established companies as well. And that's Chinese. So what are your plans on tackling that market? And when are you planning to do this?
We're looking. I mean, China. You know, you can't ignore China from an economic powerhouse. So we are looking at China. We are looking at our user growth in China. We may experiment with localizing in Chinese. We're still considering that. The challenge with China for most SaaS companies is that you have to replicate your entire infrastructure in China. For example, I have one person running all of Latin America. And I've included Spain and Portugal in that because I think Spain and Portugal are more language driven than culture driven. Evernote has gone successfully into China and has a very large team running just China. It's a big decision, and it's certain that you can grow your user base. It's not so certain that you can grow revenue.
Plus, probably clones will appear pretty time soon once you get there.
I know of 5 clones of Prezi right now.
Already?
Already.
5 of them.
But I've talked to Evernote a lot about this. They believe that there are a lot of clones of Evernote as well. They believe that, and they've been told, Chinese is an upwardly mobile market. And those upwardly mobile people like to brag that they use the real Evernote. So if you sell your product as a luxury brand in China, then they believe pretty strongly that you'll be able to make money. They're not telling me their revenue numbers, but I'm sure they're doing something because they wouldn't keep the team they have there.
Or you can just go to China and buy all the clones.
Well, that's a distraction, right? I mean, you'd need a business development organization to look at that and buy them and use your money for that reason, as opposed to using your money for building your product. I'm a big believer in trying to focus that money.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Any questions for Drew?
None? Oh, there's one.
Oh, there is one out there.
So the trick is the product. I mean, and I think this is where European startups may have a unique advantage over US or Silicon Valley startups. So Prezi is unbelievably disruptive. It's not slide-based. Anyone that would have gone after the presentation software market, if they were a Silicon Valley engineer, they would have looked at Keynote, they would have looked at PowerPoint, and they would have said, how do you make slides better? I forgot who it was that said, I think it was Yvonne that said it. You know, if you're just incrementing on what's already there, you're going to get to a dead end after at some point. The Prezi was done in Europe, so you're not like following the Silicon Valley trends that everyone follows, and it was done by a non-entrepreneur that was not analyzing the presentation software space. There have been people waiting for this kind of visual communication forever, and so our early adopters were powerful, and they were thought leaders. So that was, and then it spread down from there. And then the TED thing just, exacerbated it.
Any other questions? I think we have time for one more. One more. Do I see a hand? Okay.
Definitely forgot the question.
No, I don't need that, thanks. But thanks.
No, I started using Prezi, I think even in 2010. And the biggest problem I found out then was actually how slow it would go with different computers and transferring it from one to another. That was a problem for me, and at that point I decided not to use it at that time. But then I came back, and you know why? Because Microsoft had a commercial like half of a year ago that now you can do with PowerPoint everything that you can do with Prezi. Have you seen that? I'm sure you've seen that.
Actually, no. I want to see that commercial.
I read it. Yeah, I read it. I think it was...
Commercial? Really?
No, it was an article about it. Now PowerPoint can do everything Prezi can do. So I wanted But if you
I-
haven't seen it,
I haven't.
okay.
I'm definitely going to search on it though.
Yes, you should definitely. No, that was the question actually, to see how do you feel. I think that's like a big disruption on the market in terms of presentations.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's great, and we were talking about this yesterday, is that, you know, PowerPoint's great product. And one of the things great about the presentation software space is we don't have to displace PowerPoint. We can sit alongside PowerPoint. A lot of people will use Prezi for this kind of presentation, and then if they're presenting results that they want to send out via a deck, they'll use PowerPoint, because Prezi is about idea sharing. It's about let's get and have a dialogue. PowerPoint's great at documenting a lot of text. Prezi doesn't really shine there. So a lot of people use both. A lot of our customers use both.
Actually, I think the fact that Microsoft said that is probably the best advertisement for Prezi ever.
That's why I want to.
Okay.
I'm surprised I don't know about this article.
Can we get another round of applause for Drew?